Illinois Stories is brought to you by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by the support of viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello, welcome to Illinois Stories. I'm Mark McDonald in the Illinois River Valley of Schuyler County. As you can see, during harvest season, amid a sea of corn. And this might be the last place you'd expect to see a shipbuilder. But in fact, Dave Snyder has been for the last nearly 3 years building his 38-foot sailing vessel. His dream is to sail the Caribbean. Dave Snyder, in this sea of corn,
Yeah.
you've built this Quonset hut so that you're out of the rain and the weather so you can build your ship.
Trying to finish it up, yes.
Yeah,
My
trying to
son
finish
says
it.
it's going to be a while yet.
Yeah, well, it may be a couple of years, right?
I think so. It's
Yeah.
been 30 months so far.
It's already been almost 3 years.
Yes. Yes.
Well, it's really starting to look like a ship.
Well, we think so. At least it's rewarding for me at this point. And I get comments like that because when we did the keel, people wondered, what's that going to be?
Yeah.
Because you don't see the form like our ribs, these frames. When we started setting them up, people would say,
yeah.
it looks like it's going to be something.
Yeah. You know, this is really a good time to do this because you're starting to apply now what we call the planking.
Correct.
And that is when you see those planks at the top that go around the side of the boat, that go around the ribs on the side, that's how you can see that it's not just a skeleton anymore. You're starting to fill in the skeleton.
Right, right. And it hopefully will create the buoyancy that we intend for it at the end of that phase. And there's so many phases in the process of assembling this
Well,
thing.
you know, even just, okay, you had to build the platform on
Yeah.
which to build the boat. And you can see that, looking at that platform, you got beams here that probably held up massive barns for hundreds of years. Just the beams themselves are just as sturdy as can be, right?
Indeed, yes. Isaac, my son, and another fella wondered when they were piled up near the road how we were going to get them over here. And I said, well, the Egyptians probably used rollers. And so you see a few large round logs out there.
Yeah, you just rolled them up
That's
here, right?
right, that's
Okay.
right. And yes, it's going to support over 20,000 pounds of ship, so it had to be
Really, your
substantial.
ship is going to be 20,000 pounds.
Probably because it's mostly oak, recycled major timbers, unlike the design necessarily, it'll probably be more like 27, I would say.
27,000 pounds, incredible. And one of the reasons is like you're a recycler and a reuser, right?
Well, you have
You don't
to
buy stuff.
No, well, I don't see any reason to because of the integrity, and that's what I teach my students a lot is when you take a tube of 8 that you get at the lumber company today compared to a 150-year-old timber, oak versus pine, there's no comparison.
Yep.
But you have to be willing to do the work to repurpose that. Beams don't just fall in your lap.
Well, you got to find them.
You got to find
Then you
them.
got to get permission to take them, and then you
Absolutely.
got to get them here,
Right.
and then you got to cut them to the size you want. And the bigger the beam or the bigger the wood, the harder and longer it takes to cut, of course.
Indeed.
So yeah, there's a lot to do with it. Now let's start with the keel itself. And for those of us who aren't boat smart like me, the keel is the very bottom piece that supports the rest of the boat, right?
Right. It's going to take the most beating because occasionally you're going to run aground on purpose or otherwise. And so we began with a massive timber, approximately 28
Let's
foot
move in
long.
there and you can point out what you're talking about to us, okay?
This timber right above the concrete ballast, which we'll talk about in a minute, runs from clear up in the bow area through to the rear stern area. And it's analogous to our backbone, if you can imagine. Because as you can see, the framework, which comes later, are simply like our ribs coming off of the backbone of the boat.
Good analogy.
And
Good
so the
analogy.
backbone acts as the main component of the keel. And then in our particular case, because of the amount of buoyancy that a vessel this side will provide, we had to have a counterweight, a counterbalance to that, which required the concrete ballast.
Now, is that what I'm seeing? It actually looks like concrete here?
It is concrete.
It's concrete, hard as a rock, and you just poured concrete into the keel.
Right.
What, to keep it from toppling over when it gets into
The
rough
idea
weather?
is for every vessel, there's a certain formula, mathematical formula that's volumetric. It's three-dimensional. And if you've got a certain cubic foot area, you need to compensate that with a certain amount of ballast weight below in order to maintain this buoyancy to keep it.
How much concrete did you pour in there? Do you have any idea?
Well, all these timbers that you're looking at this viewpoint are approximately 8 inches thick. And so the ballast box that we built was 2 by 8 steel here and 1 by 8 steel there, welded together and epoxied. And then it was laying, all this keel that you see wasn't together at the time we poured this, because we had to drill through to tie the keel and the ballast box
into the
together,
box.
so that this bolt runs clear through these timbers, through a hole in the ballast box into where we were going to pour the concrete. So it was laying on its side. And we hauled the ballast box in here, put the bolts through it, and then we were able to pour concrete and fill it with rebar as well for reinforcement for the concrete.
Wow. So this thing, it will not be top heavy. It will not.
No.
It won't. That's not going to happen. And then, of course, then you got the ribs. These, I'm not sure what these are called, but these
Frames.
Okay, these are the frames, and these are like ribs. And then you go all the way up, and then you've got all the way to the top. You can see you're starting to put the planking on, which is what's going to be the side of the boat. And hopefully, what you're gonna do is make this waterproof too at the same time.
Well, fortunately, with the cooperage background I have, I understand that wood swells.
Yeah.
And this is dry, air-dried cypress from here up, and down below here we'll have 2-inch, 1.5-inch Douglas fir that again is repurposed wood. So both those components are dry lumber, and you engineer it in such a way that the joints are fairly tight. And then you create a bevel on the planking, both above and below, so that every joint between two of those members has a place where you can put in some caulking, or to some degree they call it caulking.
Okay.
It's sort of English.
Okay,
And
all right.
there are guys that in the old days would just come along and they would pay those seams. And there's a special flat tool that they stretch the cotton or the oakum through that joint and pound that in there good and snug, and maybe come back and do it again depending on the gap. If the gap's big, you start with larger diameter oakum, then you come along with cotton possibly. And now today we enjoy marine, a sort of siliconized caulk that we can put on in addition to that.
Well, listen, let's you and I step away from here and talk a little bit about why you started this project and how you got going on it, okay?
Sure.
Well, Dave, if all goes well in a couple of years, this is what your ship is going to look like.
That's right.
Yeah.
Looking forward to that day.
I'll bet you are. And I tell you, we're going to be here for the launch, okay?
that's
And you're going
great.
to launch it into the Illinois River,
That's the intention.
and you're going to go south?
According to the bridge presentations, that's the way I need to go, because our mast is not a telescopic mast.
Well, let's take a look at that. You're talking about a 50-foot mast.
right.
Wow, yeah. You can't get under bridges with that, can you?
No, and so you have to, because it's not hinged in the middle as some of the more modern ones are. This is a wooden one, so it's all single piece. So you have to have a mechanism to lift it up after you've dropped all the sails and taken all the rigging off, and then lay it in a cradle to get under any low bridges.
yeah.
And that's what we were going to have to do if we went up the Illinois to the Great Lakes. So, and then in order to go to the Great Lakes, we have to go to the Gulf and up the coast in the St. Lawrence.
Well, we're going to talk about what your plans are later on, but right now I want to look at this because this is how you're designed. This is how you designed your plan to build this ship. And you sent. Did you send for Bueller's plans? Is
Yes,
that right?
I did. I read George Bueller's backyard boat building, and that pretty much hooked me.
Yeah, and you're still, and this guy's in Seattle, right?
Right, Seattle,
And you're still in communication with him because he gives you advice, doesn't he?
Right. Well, consultation comes with the purchase of the blueprints.
And the blueprints weren't cheap.
No, they weren't.
Yeah.
They
So,
weren't.
but you have enough education and smarts that you're able to follow all this stuff.
Well, originally I didn't, for the most part, so much with the lines and the fairness. When you look at this picture, the average person, you can't make heads or tails of it. And I couldn't either a couple of years ago, but I had construction background, and I knew how to read this other stuff and how to assemble different frames and things of that sort, but I didn't quite understand all the lines and the fairness of it all. But
and when you say fairness, is that a shipbuilding term?
it
fairness?
It is.
What does that mean?
Well, as I was explaining to Randy earlier, if you look down the lines, all this had to be laid out in 2 dimensions prior to the assembly process. And so when you're looking at this, laying on a floor, and you're looking at the shear line, which is this line, this slight catenary curve from the bow clear to the stern, you can see how it's supposed to lie. Or when we do the planking, if you wrap one around and one's sticking out just a little bit strange, you can shave off some of the timber on the frame to get it to lie
so fairness is actually what your eye is telling you it should look like.
Right.
Okay, and sometimes dimensions can't give you that indication. Sometimes your eye just has to do that.
Well, if you don't execute to the perfection of the plans, you have to make alterations, or as I tell my students, revision.
And you're doing that all the time, aren't
Right.
you? You lost your patience. You started to make a model, but you lost your patience.
Well, it was recommended, and I was doing this about the time I started the keel and the platform, and it looked like it was going to take a while to do this, so I skipped the rest of it.
I want to show this
I got
too,
one plank on
because
each
this
side.
is one of the things that really got you going on this. This is a picture of you in front of a replica of the Nina.
Correct.
And you sailed on the Nina for a season or so, helping them because they needed. A lot of people don't know what a cooper is anymore, but a cooper is a person that builds barrels.
Right. It comes from a Greek word. It means to cut.
Yeah, and so you were an expert in doing that. And in fact, didn't you tell me that the reason you thought you could build a ship is because you could build barrels which kept liquid in. Right. So you thought, well, I can build a vessel to keep liquids out too, right?
That's right. That's right. It's far-fetched, perhaps, when you look at the gargantuan nature of this, but no matter what size, you could build something. If you have that, it's just applied geometry.
Yeah.
So I feel fortunate that I've been able to learn math over the years. And I like working with wood too.
Yeah.
The trees are fascinating to me.
Yeah. And in fact, you are a teacher too, right?
And I am a shop teacher.
At what, Lewiston?
Lewiston High School,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. Okay, now we've got to look at what you started with and how you started this thing. What I'd like to do, you're working on planking now.
Correct.
Maybe you and your son Isaac and I could get up in the belly of that ship and show sort of what you're in the process of doing right now.
Okay.
Could we do that?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay, Dave, we're gonna
Watch your step.
I know your wife calls you a monkey, right? Because don't have any trouble doing this. Everything I can reach here is fixed down, right? So I'm
Yes,
not going
sir.
to move or.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now we're somewhere. Okay, and Isaac, of course, he's a monkey's son, so he had no trouble at all. Okay, now we are in the belly of this boat, and I guess what I'd like to do is if we start at the back, we can kind of look back, and you've got. I think our camera can see. You've already got the motor pretty much intact where you think it's going to be. It's going to be pretty close to there.
Yeah,
huh?
it's in between the frames that it needs to be, and it just has inches to move to align with the prop shaft that we're going to do next week.
Okay.
Because that alignment's important.
And you don't, of course, you pride yourself in not buying anything new, so you've got to know your engine's old too, right?
Recycled out of a reefer truck, yes. Yeah.
Okay,
And
the reefer truck.
the commercial Caterpillar transmission as well. Watch your head.
Okay. Okay. Commercial Caterpillar transmission, so it's not going to, it won't get worn out driving this boat.
Nope.
Okay.
A friend of mine's a tugboat operator. So.
Okay. Now, we were talking about the planking, and Isaac's standing there pretty close to the top plank. You were discussing with how difficult it is sometimes to bend those planks, because not only do you have to bend them, but they kind of have to twist as well. Can the two of you kind of show how you would clamp those and work your way down?
Sure. Yeah, the transition from the bow to the rear, aft, is such that there's a change at each station. And we have to take into account that particular curvature as we're applying the timbers. In this case, we have taken the fourth plank down, and we need to secure it at this end because of the nature of the flatness, if you will. Each of these stations is going to have an intermediate frame put in between the stations, a like oak timber that will come down to the chine and run all the way to the shear.
And you'll build that in later.
And we're going to do that after we do about 5 more planks. And as you noticed earlier, it's wider here in the forward section of the ship than it is in the mid section of the ship. So you have to create what they call stealers, and that's where you make the planks wider up here because there's more area to cover. So Isaac, if you will go grab that clamp, or Cindy, could you hand him that clamp since we don't have our plank across there? The 4-foot bar clamp on top.
While she's getting that, we can take a look down there where you've got, you have this beautiful piece of Osage orange wood that you've got it all set and basically cut for the tiller. That's going to be the tiller, is that right?
That's correct, yes. I wanted to have something that would last. Here you go, Isaac. And Osage orange, any of the farmers around will tell you, lasts a long time. They use it for fence posts. And so I decided that the bowsprit, which will go from this section here.
Now explain to us what a bowsprit is.
A bowsprit is a projection off the front where they usually have that voluptuous woman carved into it.
Oh, the hood ornament.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
And all the stays, which are the lines coming from the mast, because you have this mast sticking up in the central area of the ship that has to be stabilized.
Oh, okay.
So you've got the stay going out to the bowsprit. You've got sheets, which are the lines for the foresail. And there's a lot of different connections that need to be made there, as well as a way to get out to work with your anchor and whatnot, and some place for somebody to run into you or you to run into them.
Okay.
So we're going to put this on, showing that there has to be edge set in the planks. We connected this with 3 stainless steel screws and then 2 more here, and that's been tightened up. We put a bar clamp here, we put a bar clamp here, and pulled that up so we got a good tight seal. And you can see a gap here because that's just the way it lies. So Isaac's going to go out there towards the end near where the rope is. Isaac, if
Careful,
you would.
Isaac.
Yes, I've eliminated some of the planks, so watch yourself. Just hold that plank up there if you would, Isaac. And I usually set these behind here because I've learned as I go that it's going to fall. So you might as well minimize the number of times it falls. And this one needs to be lengthened a little bit more. And as you don't want to tighten this, you have to put significant pressure on here, and you don't want it to damage the planking. So you have to take some sort of wooden block.
Yeah.
Cindy, if you would hand me one of those pieces laying up there, anything. That's too big. There's one right by the orange. Yep, that'll work. Then you lay that there, and that prevents...
Like a shim, kind of.
Yes, a shim, because this will eat into the wood, given the pressure that I'm going to exert on it. And I need to go one more length down, so loosen it up just a wee bit more. Put that across there. Then we can begin to eliminate that gap that's there between the planks. At the same time, we've got to bring this over enough so that we can also clamp it to the frame itself. Because not only do you have to have the planking up snug with the last plank, you've got to have the planking snug up against the frame itself. I'm having trouble here, Isaac. It's too long to shim, but maybe I'll get it.
Well,
there.
for demonstration purposes, it's working
Yeah,
anyway.
there it comes up, and you can just watch the gap close as you
Yeah,
inch
I can
up
see it
on
from here.
this.
Yep.
And so when you've got it good and snug, then you come along with your clamp to bring this plank up against your frame, and you want to bed every joint on this ship. And you can see it if you look around. Whenever you put two components together, you want to tar that, because that's not going to allow moisture in there.
Yeah, you've gone through a lot of tar, haven't you?
A couple of 5-gallon buckets already. Yeah.
Well, Cindy, God willing, in a couple of years, when this thing is seaworthy and ready to,
Right.
to launch into the Illinois River, I hope you'll have something to say with how this thing is outfitted, because you're going to be on it, right?
Right. Well, not that first day.
But you're not going
The
the
first day I've designated to a young friend of ours, Mo.
Well, how come you don't want to get, because you
Well,
might sink the first day? Is that why you don't want to be on
I
it?
think it'll be a lot of trial and error as far as even the sales go and that sort of thing. And I just think a younger person can run a lot faster than I can.
It might be a lot more help, huh?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
okay, all
exactly,
right.
yes.
Okay, well, let's talk about the second day then.
Okay.
The second day, and this boat's going to go somewhere, right? I mean,
Right,
it's going to go,
right.
it's not going to sit in the Illinois River, it's going to go somewhere. What's the plan?
Hoping to go to the Gulf.
To the Gulf?
Yes.
Okay.
And then from the Gulf, we've talked about going to Belize because we've been there before and we feel there's need and would like to get involved in helps. You know, whatever the need is, we'll have a plan prior to leaving, so we can stockpile the vessel.
So this isn't going to be a leisure vessel for you guys? This is
Well,
not going to
I
be something
think
that you're just
partly
gonna
leisure,
just
yeah.
retire and enjoy the sunshine and just lay
Right.
back and let the world go by. You're going to actually try to help some people in the process,
Right,
huh?
right. But in one aspect, it will be leisure. I mean, it'll be kind of a second home. And so there'll be leisure times. But we feel like there has to be a purpose to it, too. So that's why we've planned to maybe do some works, missions type programs. out
Maybe
of it.
deliver, it's a big enough ship that you could actually deliver some goods that people might not be
Yes.
able to get another
Yes.
way, huh?
Yes.
It's kind of hard if you're flying around because you can't carry stuff.
No, no.
Yeah. So, okay, if you're going to be living on this for a period of time, I imagine you're going to want some things that Dave probably hadn't thought of. What do you want? What do you want this? How do you want it to be equipped?
It'll have a small kitchenette, a small bathroom. There'll be a like a triangular couch that will break down to a bed with a table, possibly even a small loft bed. And then over the motor will be a triangular bed that should be able to sleep two. We went to the Chicago Boat Show, which is an excellent place to learn firsthand from men and women who have traveled the seas what you need as far as even seasickness. You know, everybody's going to have seasickness. There's a lot of natural ways to cope with that, like putting vents, small windows, fans over your cooking area. So basically, it'll be like a mini camper on the inside. You know, your table will break down, your couch will make into a bed, and just a lot of little cubby holes with storage.
And you could sleep, ideally, you could sleep how many people on the
4
ship?
to 6.
4 to 6.
Probably 4 comfortably, but hopefully we'll have enough, you know, spots for 6.
And still have enough storage that you could actually take some goods and
Right.
some goods with you
Right.
wherever you're going, huh?
Well, it would be like underneath your couch. It would be just like a camper. It'll pop up. You'll have a lot of storage under there. And so, and we're hoping to have a water filter so that we can actually filter the salt water and make it into regular drinking water. I already have a mini washing machine.
Really?
That is you
Yeah.
hand turn, so that I'll be able to do, you know, laundry in clean water, not the salt water.
Right.
You know, small items like that I have been tracking down in advance.
Well, you got a couple of years.
Yeah, we
Have you
do.
been on a sailboat?
Small sailboat. Absolutely hated it and gave it to him when I was 20 years old.
this is not going to be a small sailboat. This has
no.
a 50-foot mast.
Yes.
This is going to be a monster.
And I love boating. So I have joked, though, that I'll probably have a jet ski tied up there somewhere. And that way, if I feel I'm going too slow, I'll just kind of zip around him a few times that day.
Well, you've got a really good attitude about it. What do you think when he disappears for hours at a time to come down and work on the boat? Do you think he's nuts?
Oh no, Dave has had projects since I've known him in my early 20s. He has to have a project. So this is just one simple project. And as he said, you know, that if somebody walked up and they were interested in it, he would sell it, and he would either start a new one or he would start a new project, you know. So I just kind of take one day at a time. And it's been a long process because actually the beginning of it was the most detailed and, you know, putting it together. And of course, you have a work schedule, so you have to work around that other work schedule.
Yeah.
And we put this building up this summer, and that's going to help a lot. It'll be more seasonal. Instead of just being able to work in good weather, he can come down here in bad weather. And
Well, thanks and good luck.
thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
The plan is in about 2 years to take this ship down to the Illinois River and launch it, headed to the Caribbean. We're hoping that they'll let us know what the launch date is, and we'll be back with another Illinois story at that time. With another Illinois story in Schuyler County, I'm Mark McDonald. Thanks for watching.
Illinois Stories is brought to you by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by the support of viewers like you. Thank you. For a DVD copy of the program you've just seen, send $19.95 to Network Knowledge, P.O. Box 6248, Springfield, Illinois 62708. Be sure to include the program name, subject, and when the program aired. You can also order with your credit card by calling 800-232-3605.